for joining me today. Today's going to be a get ready with me, and I'm going to sit down and use all the products that I'm currently panning, show you some sneak peeks of how much I'm progressing on each of them. And while I get ready, I'm also going to talk about how I'm going to be approaching makeup purchases this year. I'm going to start by putting on some of this Tarte Poreless Primer. This is just a mini, and I'm just going to focus it on the T-zone, the center of my face. And the reason I wanted to do this video is because I've been watching a lot of panning content. A lot of people are going on no buys and low buys. They're setting up beauty banks where, you know, if they do certain things, they can add the number of products that they can buy into a bank. And these are all so fun to watch. I love watching panning adjacent content to begin with, and just different people's philosophies on being smart with what they bring in and what they have, and just being more conscious of the amount of money they spend. And it's really inspiring. It's cool to witness everybody's thought process and that they're willing to share like what works and what doesn't and things that they've learned. And it really helps me to figure out what would work for me and what I like in each of those different types of projects and exercises. But while I was watching all of those, it seemed to me like a lot of them were trying to be better about how much money they spend, or maybe they just want to own less makeup. And of course that's wonderful, just having some sort of reason to want to improve in some way, and taking us along as they do that is so wonderful, and I'll definitely be watching. But I'm in a place where I'm working through a lot of makeup right now. I have a ton of products that are almost finished. And like I've mentioned before, this is probably going to be one of my biggest panning years ever, and probably will ever be, just because of the amount of product that I'm finishing organically this year. And as a result, I'm feeling very energized and ready to explore. I want to go out there and try new things. I want to try new brands and new products and techniques. So I still want to bring in new things and enjoy trying new makeup and stuff, but I don't want to fall into the old traps that I have fallen into in the past. I don't want to take advantage of how much I'm using and bring in a bunch of stuff and then feel overwhelmed again with how much I own, which is why I originally went on a no-buy for the entirety of 2017. I've done a no-buy January that was inspired by Shauna. If you don't know who Shauna Rapari is, I'll definitely link her channel below. She has a ton of really useful and well-informed content based around, you know, being content with what you have and about no buys and low buys, and it's just really interesting to hear her talk, and the way that she phrases things is very useful and beneficial. So I will link her channel below. Now I'm going to use this Merit highlighting stick, and I'm going to focus that right on the high points of my cheeks, kind of using it as like a highlighting primer. And then I'm trying to finish these NYX drops here, and I'm going to take like 4 or 5 drops of that on the back of my hand, and then take a little bit of this Youth Glow Brightening Primer by Charlotte Tilbury. Just put a little squirt of that just to kind of sheer it out a little bit. So yeah, I just wanted to find a way to strike a balance, still, you know, not feel too restricted with what I'm doing, still make sure I'm focusing on the products that are almost finished, and being able to bring in new things, kind of just keeping that juggling act and keeping things balanced so that I don't get overwhelmed either way. And instead of just like starting something arbitrary and just putting these rules together, this is a sponge by e.l.f. by the way. This is my second time using it. It's like enormous compared to the beauty blender that I use, and it's very, very bouncy. And I don't feel like it absorbs as much product as the beauty blender can. But I've also been using that beauty blender for like a year now, so it might just be getting older. I like it so far, but I'm just getting used to the size. So instead of just creating a bunch of arbitrary rules, or just, you know, starting a project that I see someone else doing, I really wanted to get to the reasons why I enjoy makeup. Just kind of going back to the basics. What exactly do I get out of it? What is the point of me having and curating a collection and panning makeup? Like what's in it for me? Essentially. And I know this looks really light, but I promise it does match. I was able to break it down into like 4 different categories, and I have a ton of notes written on my laptop over here, so that's why I'm looking over here. Obviously, the very main reason I enjoy having a collection and wearing makeup every day is the actual process of applying it and wearing it. So I enjoy having that sort of a ritual every morning, just sitting down quietly and doing something for me and just kind of just having a little bit of like a routine where I do a full face. I enjoy like the transformation, the before and after, and I just like putting it on. I just enjoy the whole process, everything about it. You know, you're building layers. It's almost like you're painting a picture where you're building layers and kind of working towards this final look. And sometimes you don't know how it's going to turn out. Sometimes you have a very specific thing in mind, but you kind of just let the creative process take you. And then throughout the day, I can admire my artwork. I can admire my canvas and be like, wow, you know, that highlighter looks really nice, or I love how that eyeshadow catches in the light, or oh, that lip color goes really nicely with that sweater. Maybe being able to build an outfit or wear a certain top with the makeup that you're wearing. It's just fun, and it's a little bit of a creative moment, and I just really enjoy that process, and it's one of my favorite things about having makeup. And having multiple products means I get to choose and try different things in different color combinations. I'm going to use a little bit of the NYX Glitter Glue Primer on my lids, and then the lighter half of the Sigma Color Contouring Duo on my under eyes. So that element of playing around, of exploring and trying new things and putting two things together to see if I like how they are combined, that is a really, really enjoyable part of the process for me. Another big reason why I enjoy having the collection I have and doing what I do with it is getting to be a part of the panning of the products. It's really satisfying to use a blush so much that you eventually hit pan on it, or watch the product in a container slowly go down. Just watching things get used up over time. It's really satisfying. It's also fun to try and find new ways to use something, like multi-purposing it. There is an element of creativity there as well. It just feels good to get my money's worth. And because I track my uses for a lot of the things that I wear on a regular basis, I also get to create cost per use content. I get to have a spreadsheet and track things over time. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really, really enjoy that part of it. And it's a big reason why I'm able to stay so organized and so aware of my collection at all times, is because I do track it and reflect on that pretty often. And it also just feels good to spend money on a product, especially like a more high-end product, and use it until it's finished. It really makes me feel like I got my money's worth and that it was a good investment. I'm not saying you have to finish something to the very end in order for it to be a good value. Certainly there are some makeup products that I do buy and I don't really have any intention of ever fully finishing them, and eventually they will expire, but I try to minimize that, of course. Like, I try not to go overboard, but I'm not saying that the only way you can get your money's worth out of a product is by finishing it all the way, and that you've like failed if you don't do that. I'm not saying that, but for a lot of my products, I do purchase them with the intention and the hope to eventually get to use them all the way through. And also, like, finishing something to the very end teaches me a lot about that product and how long it takes to realistically finish it, and that helps me make smarter purchases down the line. If I know something takes forever to use up, then I know to maybe cut back on the amount of products I have in that category, just because it's not very realistic that I will finish it. For example, for me, like, foundations and lipsticks are the slowest things for me, and so I do try to make sure I don't buy like every lipstick and foundation under the sun. And if I do want to bring some new ones in, I kind of mentally say, hey, why don't you finish one or two of the foundations you have first before bringing in a new one? And it also lets me see how my preferences change over time and how I use makeup changes over time. I'm going to take a little bit of this Merit highlighter stick. I'm gonna just scrape a little bit on the back of my fingernail. And then I'm gonna take this Stila Liquid Lipstick Mini in the shade Bocce. And I took the stopper out of this, so there's really not a ton of product left. And I'm gonna put some of that on the back of my hand too. And then I'm just going to take a teeny little drop of that NYX foundation again and put that there too. I know that looks really complicated, but it creates a really, really pretty color when you mix it all together. And both the foundation drop and the highlighter, like, their formulas help to create a really thin product. And I know that looks really heavy, but I promise it's not actually that scary on the cheeks. It's just a really pretty flush. And I find that having a little bit of something underneath your powder helps to make the powder blush that you put on top pop a little bit more and also last a little bit longer. I'm just going to take the other side of that and help the lines on the bottom be a little bit softer. But yeah, you only need a little bit of each of those 3 products to create enough for both cheeks. And then I am going to add a little bit of the contour wand, just a little bit right here and here. I think I showed this in my last Get Ready With Me, and it really hasn't changed. And another benefit that I get from makeup, which it can be lumped in sort of with the second one that I talked about, panning products, but I wanted to separate it out because I do think it's worth having its own bullet point, and that is being an active part of the panning community, both on Instagram and YouTube. I just love the panning community as a whole. People are so encouraging and kind, and I remember when I first started my channel, my first video was like a products I've hit pan on, and then I did a lot of my content was still around that because I was in the middle of a no buy year and my Project Pan videos and stuff, and it was me kind of like putting myself out there for the first time, and people were so kind. Like, I remember the people I would email with and talk to in the comments and stuff are people that still comment on my videos today, and that was 6 years ago. So these are like long-term friendships that are being built, and so just learning so much from other panners. Like, everyone always has like a new idea to multitask a product, or a new way to use something, or a new mindset, a new practice. It's just such a fantastic thing to be a part of. Even if you're not actively making panning content, you can still be a part of it. The majority of the content on YouTube I watch is panning content, or at least related to panning and like being mindful about what you buy. I'm going to use this Makeup Revolution highlighter, or Makeup Revolution concealer stick, to put just on the corners and then on the outside part and right around my bottom of my nose too, just because I get a lot of redness there. And another reason why I love the panning community as a whole is because the majority of the people in my life either don't wear makeup at all, they might own a few products, or even if they do like makeup, they don't really care about like the panning part of it. So I have very few people, if any, in my life who like get it, Like, if you're a panner, you think about things a certain way, and I just love having a community of people who feel the same way I do. And yeah, it's such a creative environment too, because everyone's coming up with different types of project pans and different prompts and different ways, and it's just so fun, and it keeps things fresh and exciting, even though in a lot of cases you're using a lot of the makeup like over and over again. Just with any of the different ways that you can pan a product, it's always exciting and fun, and then it's also motivating to actually be making progress on something too. And people are genuinely happy for you when you make progress, and vice versa. You're excited to see other people like make major progress on something that they were struggling with too. It's just a good time, and if you're a part of the panning community, you get it. I'm gonna take this Kosas powder. Look how good. Like, I really don't have a ton left. It's kind of just like on the outside rings. And I mainly just use this to set my under eyes and set my primer on my eyes, and I just use my sponge to do it. Something about this formula, I don't know, when I use a brush, I feel like I get way too much of it, and if you apply too much of it, it can look super cakey. And even if you apply more, that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna set your foundation or your concealer any better. So I don't know, I wouldn't buy it again. It's fine for what I'm using it now, but definitely not something that I need to run out and purchase again. Like I've mentioned, I really love the violet powder from Besame, and so I'll probably continue using that. I would be curious to try that one powder from Charlotte Tilbury that just came out, like the translucent one. And something I've been trying lately is using my setting spray before I powder my face down. And I don't know, I feel like I like it better. I think I use a lot of moisturizing products, and so over time my face does get oily enough to kind of take the powdery down look on its own. At least that's how it's been right now. So if I set my powder products, or if I set my makeup and then put powder on top, I feel like that does help with the longevity more so than waiting until the very end to put on setting spray. And I'm sure people can relate where you know, you'll put on your mascara and your liner and everything, and then you'll use a setting spray and it'll just travel to your lower lashes. That's been happening to me a lot lately. I don't exactly know why. And this no filter setting spray from ColourPop has the longest stream of product spray ever. Let me show you. Let me see if I can show you on camera. So if I push it down, if I just slowly push it down, it'll go forever. Do you see that? That was all one spray just now. It's so long, right? That one's just okay. Like I've said, that one smells like Lemon Pledge, and I just don't really feel like I can get past that. All right, and now for the last benefit or last source of value, and this one is the trickiest one because it's very finite and it's definitely got kind of like a curve to it, much more so than the other ones. Like I really don't get tired of wearing makeup every single day. I don't get tired of panning products. I don't get tired of being in the panning community. But for this one has like a cap. And once I go above that cap, then I'm not getting the value or happiness anymore. And that is getting to actually purchase and try new products. So I love buying and trying new things. It's a part of being a makeup enthusiast, getting to see what's out there, getting to find your new favorite, or finding a favorite in something that you haven't found a favorite in yet. There's always new formulas, new brands, new innovations, and of course, like, you can only reinvent the wheel so many times. Like I saw in a Reddit comment the other day that they were like, you know, the Lisa Eldridge lip glosses are great, but like, there probably haven't been any really new lip gloss formulas made because pretty much every type of gloss that you could make is already out there. And I definitely agree. I feel like, you know, there's only so much innovation that you can do with a certain product, but there are a lot of brands out there who are really changing it up. I think about the, you know, duochromes and multichromes of the world. Like those have dramatically increased in quality and in options. A ton of brands out there just, you know, changing the game up, and it's fun to see. It's fun to try out. And sometimes even if you don't want to buy it, you see a new palette and you're like, wow, that color story is so inspiring and so fresh and so for me. And maybe you can recreate it in your collection, but just the fact that it's being made and then being put out there is a source of inspiration for me, even if I'm not necessarily buying it. But that's tricky because, you know, you don't want to be so on the pulse, at least I don't want to be so on the pulse with what's being put out there that I feel like the stuff I have isn't enough. Like I don't want the perceived value of what I already own to be discounted because I'm always looking at what's new and what's out there. Like I want to find that balance of being inspired by the new things that are being done and being able to try things whenever I am that excited and motivated to buy it, but still find contentment and still be happy with the things that I already have. I'm going to use this e.l.f. pressed powder. It's technically called the blotting powder, but I'm just going to use it to set my foundation, which I don't think I've ever actually done, but I just finished my other powder, my Too Faced Peach Powder, and this is the next one that I'd like to work through. I used to keep this in my backpack for like touch-ups, but with it having such a big pan in it, I don't really want to keep it in my backpack anymore because I feel like it's much more likely to break. And I'm using it to set my face and I'm liking it. At least this is literally my first time doing it. I just finished that powder yesterday, so this is me trying it. And yeah, I think I like it, so that's good. That's how I'll reach for this then. And then I've been putting on powder highlighter first and then blush and bronzer, and I feel like I still get the glow from the highlighter, but using the other brushes to apply the other products helps keep this from being too heavy or stripey on my face. So this is the Charlotte Tilbury highlighter, and I usually just kind of like lightly sweep it just around the orbital bone, I think is what it's called. It's really pretty, but I don't use nearly as much of this as I used to back in the day. And then I'm gonna use this Nabla bronzer. It's been really hard to get enough product onto my brush, and this is a lighter color, so it's already something that did require a lot of building, so I have to use like a really scratchy brush. This is just a Real Technique one, and like pinch it and kind of like go multiple times to even pick up enough product. So that leads me to believe that this is like almost finished. Once I'm not able to get any more product on my brush, obviously that'll be done, because with the way this pan it works, I'm not sure how much extra product I can get from like between those little holes in that waffle pan. Not really sure. So I'm gonna just play it by ear. And once I'm not able to get any more product from it, then I will stop. And I hit pan on a blush yesterday. I didn't even realize it. It was like a surprise. It kind of looks hidden there. And it makes me think that maybe I hit pan on it previously but didn't realize it. Like I probably hit pan on it a couple of days ago, but I didn't realize it until yesterday. But that's so exciting. I really love this blush. And I really love using this with the Luminoso blush because this one has a little bit of depth to it. And then the Luminoso one is a little more sheer, and I'm not going for like an overtly peachy blush look most days. And I like how shimmery this is. And I also hit pan on this one. That's exciting. That's a spoiler for my Project Pan update. But what I like to do is use the Hourglass blush kind of everywhere. Kind of like that sunburnt look. And this one's like a more natural color for me, and it does have some element of glow to it, but it's really not shimmery or anything. And then I take the Milani and I put a little bit of that like on the high points of my cheek, kind of as a blush topper. And then I take my powder brush and kind of go around the sides to soften it, just so that it isn't too heavy. And once I have my eye makeup on, it'll look a lot more balanced. Now I have this single shadow from ABH. It was like a really light cool tone brown. It was in the shade Stone, and I mushed it all up and put the rest of it in this little container, and there isn't much left, probably 2 or 3 more uses. And I use that as a contour. Sometimes I'll use it on my cheeks and on my forehead, but I feel like sometimes in real life that doesn't look very good. So I really only focus it on the back of my jaw here. Just a little bit for some definition, but I don't need to like have a fully contoured look. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this pink eyeshadow from the Sydney Grace palette, and I do still have a little bit of red in my hair, and so I'm going to put a little bit of that in my brows just to tint them and make them a little warmer. I don't need to use nearly as much as when my hair was super red, just a little tint. So I'm not gonna bore you with like economics terms, but there is an economic concept that I think is really useful whenever I'm thinking about how much in each category I'm willing to own, and that is the concept of diminishing returns. And it's been quite a few years since college, and so I'm not probably gonna say this the most eloquently, but I had a professor who would explain it like if you were really, really hungry and you spent $5 to buy a hamburger, Essence Brow Gel, you would eat that hamburger, it would satisfy your hunger, and it would be a really good value for your money because you had a want or a need and the hamburger addressed it and you got a ton of value out of it. But let's say you went and bought a second hamburger. You were still a little hungry, so you bought the second hamburger, another $5 spent. I'm gonna use the Charlotte Tilbury quad. You eat that hamburger like you weren't as hungry, and so you still got value out of that $5 you spent, but it was just slightly less than what you got from that first hamburger. And the more hamburgers you buy and eat, the less value you get from each additional hamburger. And that is the same case for the majority of the makeup that I have. Of course, I like having variety, so if I buy one eyeshadow palette and then I buy a different color story and another eyeshadow palette, both of them probably have the same value because they are different enough. But let's talk about something that's maybe a little bit more basic, I should say, like a concealer. If I need a concealer and I go and buy one, I'm getting a ton of value from it, but how much extra value am I gonna get from my 30th concealer? Yes, it is good to have options and try things out, but there is a limit. I needed to figure out what that limit was for me. And of course that changes over time, and in order to get to try new things, for me, I want to be able to finish up some of the things that I have. Maybe I can finish some of the concealers that I have and kind of make sure that I'm not in a position where bringing on that next highlighter is not gonna actually add any value. Like I said, it's been several years since I've been in school. I probably didn't like explain that fully the way I could have, but it definitely is something useful for me to keep in mind. And so it's very important that I'm able to strike a balance and make sure that each of those reasons why I love makeup and love collecting and trying new things is being maximized. Like the value I get from each one is being maximized. So how do I do that? Something that really clicked for me recently is I was watching this video from, and it was about like her feeling like she buys something and then she feels like she wastes her money. And she talks about mimetic desire. She talks about alignment purchases. It's a really useful video. I will link it below. I definitely recommend watching it. And she just kind of talks about like why sometimes she'll buy something and spend a lot of money on it and like instantly regret it, versus other things she'll buy it and she doesn't regret it at all. She would spend that money all over again because it was aligned with her as a person. So that's what I want to do. I don't want to just bring in things to try them and that be its only use for me. Like I want it to be something that actually aligns with my preferences. It needs to be an intentional purchase that aligns with whatever I'm going for at the time. And really that just means if I'm going to bring something in, it needs to have a reason, and that reason needs to be authentic and not a superficial reason, or just because I want it because someone else has it, or because I want to be the type of person who owns that product. Like that's not a good reason for me to buy something. Additionally, I do want to still strike that balance of making sure I'm working through more products than I'm bringing in, at least for this year. And so I think what I'm going to do for now is set up, it's kind of like a beauty bank, where if I use up a certain amount of products, then I can bring in a certain amount. And so I was originally like, okay, for every 10 products I finish, I'll bring in 5. But then I was like, you know what? I'll take it up a notch. I'll make it just a little bit harder and do 11. So every 11 products I finish, I can bring in 5. And I have already finished 11, I think 12 or 13 at this point. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a video where I show my wish list and show the things that I'm excited to try, and then we kind of shop together. And you can give me your recommendations. You can say, hey, I don't think that this is something that would actually align with what you like or what you want, or I tried this and it was horrible for this reason, or, you know, just kind of help me make sure I'm making the right move. Sarah Rose does that. I think a couple other people do that, where they kind of show you their shopping cart and then they get your feedback before they actually make the purchase. I think that would be really useful for me. I think that would be a really great chance to kind of get other people's thoughts on the formulas, because there are only so many things that you can learn from doing your own research. Like a lot of times certain products will have like a really strong scent and they won't say that in the description. They won't say that in the swatch videos, but then you don't really know it until you try it yourself. And that has burned me before, where I'll buy a lip product and it'll be super minty or it'll taste really gross, and like that wasn't ever mentioned anywhere whenever I was trying to figure out if it was worth buying. So I just think having some input on those little details that do sometimes make all the difference would be really beneficial for me. Using some shades from the ABH Sultry palette, I'm gonna grab that dark brown, put that on the outer portion. I'm gonna grab Pearl, which is that really shimmery pink color, and put that all over the lid. So that is what I'm gonna do. I've been talking forever. I'm out of breath from how much I've been talking. I really hope that was enjoyable and not just a bunch of blabbering. I hope that was informative in some way, maybe allowed you to think about things in a different way. I'm gonna grab this silver color, put this on the inner corner, and then I'm gonna go over with that satin shade. I've actually been using this to blend my matte colors, and that has been so good. Like that has just been, I've been loving that, because I don't know, something in the formula is just a little bit softer and it's just better at blending, and it's close enough to my skin tone. Game changer. And then I'm gonna take that same brush, it's like a scratchier brush, and grab that topper shade and kind of just put that all over just to make it even more shimmery and bright. And then I'm going to go back in with that dark brush and just add a little bit more depth on the outer edges there. I think this is gonna be a really great practice for me because I am setting up a little bit of a hurdle. Like I can't just go out and buy whatever I want and constantly be purchasing. Like it makes it really special and exciting, and then it also makes me very particular about what I bring in because that bank does eventually run out, and so I only have so many products that I could realistically purchase in a year, and that makes me a lot more intentional with each one, and that way I'm not overdoing it and I'm not over purchasing and overwhelming myself without like working some products out first. And so at the end of the year, I'm hoping a lot of my older products will be worked out and they'll be replaced with some newer products, and that'll help to kind of refresh my collection and maybe update it a little bit without me being necessarily wasteful. Like I'm not just decluttering a bunch of stuff to bring new things in. Look how small this eyeliner is and this lip liner. They're so little. They're almost done. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Classic Brown pencil. I'm going to put a little bit of this on the outer edge in the tight line, and then I've done this in countless tutorials where you kind of flick it up on the outer corners, work it into the lash line just on the outer edges. I find that really like particular sharp lines just isn't the most flattering on me. Like if you look, I have relatively softer features, and so any like graphic lines or like really harsh lines, even like really specific blending, like where the lines are really crisp and clean, I just don't feel like that's as flattering. It doesn't really bring the balance to my face that I want. And so sometimes I just like layering things and mushing them together and just having like a softer, not as defined eye makeup. At least that's how I've been lately. A little bit more murky, I guess, and not so structured. Using the Charlotte Tilbury Legendary Lashes Volume 2. Whoops. Okay, I loved this at first. This was like just completely changing my life the first month and a half that I used it. And now that it's getting drier, I'm not liking it as much. It feels heavier. It's not separating my lashes the same way. I don't know. Part of me is relieved by that because then I don't feel as compelled to go out and spend $30-something on a mascara. But also it's kind of sad. I really loved this at first, and now I'm just like, eh. But my lashes are not great right now, and so that can't all be the mascara's fault. I want something separating and lifting. Like we'll keep the curl and separate. Like I'm not super concerned about a ton of volume. Some people like a clumpier look, but I feel like my lashes can't really handle that. So a lightweight formula with a brush that helps to separate the lashes and keep them lifted. So if it's a lightweight formula, it's much more likely to stay up. If anyone has any recommendations for that type of formula, please let me know. Last is lips. I did have a little bit of lip gloss or lip balm on earlier to moisturize my lips. I'm just gonna wipe that off, go around the edges. I really don't have a ton of uses left. I wasn't able to sharpen it anymore yesterday, so this might be the last of it. Like once I wear it down, I don't think I can sharpen it again. I think it's too small. But this is Nude Suede Shoes by NYX. And I used to love this formula, but now I prefer the other formula. The one in the black packaging that's like the slim lip pencils. I like those ones a lot better. I feel like they're not as creamy as this one. This is my second one of this shade that I've gone through, so I did like them for a long time, but I just find that I prefer the stiffer wooden pencils more. And then kind of mushing it. And then I'm gonna use this gloss stick from Ulta. This is in the shade Chill Pill. They recently expanded their shade options. I think they only had 2 available previously, but now they have more, and I love it. I was obsessed with trying like all the gloss stick, lipstick balm, hybrid products. I was obsessed with trying all of those last year. I still want all of them. It seems like brands are coming out with new ones all the time. I think Flower Beauty just came out with one, and I just want them all. So yeah, any information you can give me on how to stay happy and creative in what I'm doing. I've been panning and being smart about what I buy for years now. My hair is still wet. I'll go dry that later. You know, I've been doing this for years, and things just kind of change over time. The way my brain works, the amount of money that I have to spend, what my collection looks like already. Like those things gradually change over time, and so sometimes you can't apply the same practices that worked for you in the past. And so if you have any advice to give me or just any thoughts that you'd like to share, I hope you enjoyed this super long video. I will see you in my next one very soon. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!